And I do want to take you out to some breaking news that we do have coming in from the Associated Press here, as they're saying that Russian strikes on Ukraine have killed at least 20 people. That is according to officials in Ukraine, as heavy aerial attacks continued into the second night following a U.S. decision to stop sharing satellite images with Ukraine. The decision to withhold intelligence and military aid did come on the heels of that visit that we talked about to the White House and the tension that existed between Zelensky as well as President Trump. So I want to ask overall what impact all of this is going to have with essentially the White House and the U.S. saying they're not going to share this information. And now you have 2 days of strikes that have killed another 20 people here.
That's right, Josh. There was also a report yesterday in Time magazine where the reporter talked to American and Ukrainian officials off the record, and they said there are already hundreds of dead Ukrainians because of the suspension of U.S. intelligence assistance to Ukraine. It makes it harder for Ukraine to track these incoming missiles that are slamming into Ukrainian cities. It makes it harder for Ukrainian troops on the ground to track Russian troop movements, and it makes it harder for Ukrainians to target Russian sites inside Russia or on the battlefield without that intelligence assistance from the United States. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is the suspension of military aid. That won't kick in as immediately as the suspension of intelligence assistance, but there are some things the United States provides that it's really hard to get anywhere else. The most important probably being Patriot air defense systems, which are used to protect Ukrainian cities from Russian missile and drone strikes. But other things that the U.S. provides in terms of short-range missiles used to attack depots and other, troop emplacements inside Russia or near the border, all of this is going to make it easier for Russia to be on the offensive and harder for Ukraine to defend itself going forward.
Kind of piggybacking on that, how pivotal is the U.S. in Ukraine winning its war against Russia? Can Ukraine win and essentially defeat Russia, so to speak, without assistance from the U.S.?
No, I don't really think so. I think U.S. military assistance is pretty pivotal to the Ukrainian war effort. Currently, U.S. military assistance is about 20% of what Ukraine uses on the battlefield. 25% comes from Europe, and the rest comes from the Ukrainians themselves. So the Ukrainians have developed the ability to provide more of their own equipment and materiel. So they're providing a lot of drones, for example, and they've gotten better at manufacturing other military equipment over the course of the war under these obviously emergency situations. But what the U.S. can provide in terms of certain technologies and certain intelligence assistance is really unrivaled by any other country around the world. Europe is talking about stepping up its effort to replace that, to provide more military assistance and more intelligence assistance, but that will take some time. So it should be clear to everyone that with the U.S. seemingly no longer supporting Ukraine militarily, that it's going to be much harder for Ukraine to resist Russian invasion.
Is Ukraine any closer at this point to a ceasefire with Russia? Do we know, again, the U.S. has kind of backed down on some of its assistance, as you mentioned, toward Ukraine, but is there a ceasefire that is going to happen here in the near future? Do we know?
Well, that's clearly what President Trump is pushing for very hard, but honestly, I think the way the U.S. is going about it is not inclined to make a ceasefire take place and last. All the pressure at the moment seems to be on the Ukrainians to show that they're willing to settle and that they want peace. But the country that started the war is Russia, and it's Russia that's on the attack. And Russia sees that the U.S. is pulling back from supporting Ukraine in stopping military and intelligence assistance. Even medical assistance to Ukrainian soldiers has been suspended. It's been reported. So there's no real incentive for Russia to stop right now. The incentive for them is to accelerate their attacks. And President Trump yesterday in the Oval Office seemed to acknowledged that and saying, anyone in Putin's position would do what he's doing. So I don't understand exactly what the strategy is on the U.S. side. If we want there to be a ceasefire and if we want there to be peace, the country that needs to be put under pressure is the country that started the invasion and is, waging war against an independent country across its borders. So the strategy seems backwards, and I don't see this leading to a lasting peace unless equal or more pressure is put on the Russian side.
Hey, Brian Taylor, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us and provide some perspective. As I mentioned, we always appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
And I do want to take you back out to this breaking news that we are following right now, as the Associated Press reporting that Russian strikes on Ukraine have killed at least 20 people as those heavy aerial attacks continued into the second night following the U.S. decision to stop sharing those satellite images with Ukraine. We're going to keep you updated here on all of that as it does continue to develop.